Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Short Bus Debate Club. This is Brian Courtney, and I'd like to thank you for joining us again. This week we're going to talk about voting. We touched on it, or not this week, this episode. We're going to talk about voting. Last episode we talked about it in some detail with regard to, Roe versus Wade and some other things, but we're going to dive in a little more detail and talk about how much good it does and what it actually might do if more people did something. What do you think, Darren?
I think in addition to that, what it doesn't do, what certain assumptions that people have with regards to the institutions of voting. Um, there's no doubt that if you have a conscious population that's actively involved in what it is that's happening inside of a society, there's a greater possibility that they would be able to affect outcomes. But there are certain presumptions with regards to voting in this, in the United States particularly, but of course throughout the rest of the world, where because we have such a romantic disposition towards the concepts of democracy, we have there's a loaded assumption with regards to outcomes, right? And I just I think that we need to think about whether or not it's demonstrable that there's a correlation between voting and outcomes, like so. But again, stuff that we'll all get into. No matter what, this is the world we live in. This is the society we live in. I'm never going to make an argument to not vote. I mean, in my life, I voted in every election I've had the capability of voting in since '96. I vote, but you see these really weird institutions. We talked a lot about the Republicans last time. There are some things that will make a person skeptical after a while. So, but as far as I mean, because of your the people's propaganda stuff, you always had you had this firm hope belief, I mean, in an activated population, like the philosophical presumption that if they're involved, the royal they are involved, consciously, actively, constantly aware. Yeah, there's some possibilities, but man, that shit's work.
Well, it definitely is work, and I think that there's some confusion and there's also some shady shit that happens within the within our democracy. And I'll talk about the shady shit in a minute, but I think that that's one of the reasons that people use the argument, well, it's the lesser of two evils, and or he or she is the lesser of two evils. And that, I mean, I'm glad that you're voting, but that's a shitty fucking argument. That's like saying, well, I really, really don't want to bang that girl, but at least she has teeth, so I guess I'll go ahead and bang her.
Really? Really?
So, the lesser of two evils is not a good argument, especially since there's more than two parties out there. But that's where, some of the shady shit that I was talking about comes into effect.
Yeah, the duopoly, the two-party system makes it very difficult to have and dude, in the last the in I'm gonna say something. I just want to shoot myself in the head the second it comes out of my fucking mouth. I voted for Hillary in 2016. I can't fucking believe I voted for that whole bag.
Wah, wah.
But I didn't make the same mistake for them. It didn't really matter because we're in Colorado. Colorado was they were definitely not going to, Trump was not going to win Colorado. That was a foregone conclusion. So it's easier to make a third party, to do the protest vote. It's different when you're like in Virginia or something like that, where shit cuts a lot closer. But
see, I don't know. I still think that you should vote for who you want, and I'm a firm believer that if any of the independent parties can grab even a 3% stake in, registered voters, that you'd start to see a change because the DNC and the GOP would raise their eyebrow and they'd be a little scared. The Libertarian Party was coming close to hitting that 3%, maybe even higher, but something happened which fucked up the Libertarian Party, and they were infiltrated. And basically, the Libertarian Party kind of splintered in the 90s because, people from the GOP, of course, they're not going to say they're from the GOP, but they go in and start giving, even at that time, some of the rhino type of beliefs. And it basically fractured the Libertarian Party, and they lost a lot of the ground that they had held. There are some parties out there that there's no fucking way they're ever going to get even 1%, because they're just crazy as hell. The Constitution Party wants to go back to just the Bill of Rights and the Bible.
B-O-B-and-B. B-O-R-B.
Just not gonna happen. There's a bunch of parties nobody's ever heard of before, but really,
slow down for a second though here. Like the point that you're making about the libertarians, right? I mean, we all watched what happened with the Reform Party, right? 92, 96, and 2000, right? I mean, like there was an incredible amount of this. I'm sure my dad was a Reform Party guy because he is an uber libertarian. He is not a right wing Christian Republican. My family's been Republican all my life. They're all Eastern Colorado people. My first job was delivering Republican propaganda in Littleton when I was 7 or 8 years old. So, I mean, that's where I cut my teeth in politics, but didn't understand the first fucking thing about what it was that I was seeing or what was going on. But having said that, there was a division in the Republican Party between, the libertarian, sort of more libertarian ethos, the small government disposition, the freedom space, and then the rise of the Christian right? So, who am I thinking? What's old boy's name? The ears, Ross Perot, right? The ears. Come on, man.
If I was flying a plane.
But he comes in 92. He's a businessman. He's very, a lot of people love him. They get huge numbers out of him. And he obviously, that Clinton Bush wins again if Ross Perot does not come into the election in 92. It's a mathematical fact, right? Probably wouldn't have won in 96 if Ross Perot didn't run again, right?
Ross Perot might have won if he didn't quit twice.
He quit twice?
Yeah.
But he got those numbers.
He kept saying, "Well, I'm not gonna do it."
But he still got those numbers.
If I'm flying a plane,
he had like
he had huge numbers.
And then who did they run in 2000? Do you remember who they ran in 2000?
No.
They run fucking Pat Buchanan, right?
Oh yeah.
He was a crazy, like reactionary. I mean, he was pre-Trump wall, Pat Buchanan,
Yeah, that was Newt Gingrich's buddy.
And what did he get in terms of vote? He got less than 1%, because if they would have run another candidate at that point in time, then what would have happened? They would have gotten the funding, and that would have been a group of people that would have pulled from the Republican Party forever. The same trite fucking bullshit that the Democrats argue when it comes to the Green Party, right? They sit there and fucking blame fucking Hillary's loss on Jill Stein. I mean, give me a fucking break, right? But the fact of the matter is, anytime a greener runs, they make the same argument that the Republicans were making about the Reform Party back then. And we can never, until this situation is dealt with in a meaningful way, that duopoly position is not going to change. I told you about that Matthew Moe guy, the guy down in North Carolina, where this is hilarious. I mean, there's a ton of other podcasts that talk about this a bunch better than I will. Brandon Joy Gray had on Bad Faith, had Jill Stein, and I believe Matt Moe's lawyer. I think that's the guy's name. But he's running as a Green Party candidate in North Carolina for Senate, and he was supposed to get X amount of signatures, 12,000 or something like that. He got 16,000-ish, somewhere in that general vicinity. And the Democratic Party had these actors that were calling people up saying that they were Green Party actors. They used, allegedly they were using the roles of the Democratic Party voters. and figure out who had signed these. Because on the when you sign the petition to get on the Green Party or to get on the candidacy in North Carolina for the Senate or for whatever their state rules are, you don't put your phone number on it. So they had to go through these rolls and find these people's phone numbers, if I understand this correctly. And they contacted these people and said, "We're from the Green Party, and we just wanted to make sure that you would sign a document saying you want Matt Moe to be a candidate for Senate in North Carolina as a Green Party person." And there's a really good recording that they played on one of the podcasts where this guy's he's saying, "So you're telling me you're calling from the Green Party asking me whether or not I really want this guy to be my candidate?" He says, I don't get it. That doesn't sound like something that somebody that's endorsing a Green Party person would do." Of course, because it was all bullshit. And when the lawyer went up in front of them and they said, "Well, we're not ready to certify the signatures and your actions to get Matt Moe on the," they silenced the lawyer. They wouldn't even allow him to ask. They wouldn't give him a concrete answer with regards to why it was they're doing it. And you know what it is. I mean, of course, North Carolina it's a borderline place where it's a battleground space. So Democrats think that, I mean, you can sit there and make the arguments that Trump is trying to undermine democracy, but when a Green Party candidate wants to get on a voter roll, then he's not allowed to. So I mean, he's not allowed to do that because a Democrat might lose because they're taking away. So who's undermining democracy here? Help me to understand where, because I'm sorry, I'm not running for any teams. I'm running for outcomes. So I'm sorry, I was kind of going on, but that whole space where the duopoly position it's like a hurdle that we don't have a real concrete way of getting over.
No, and that's the shady shit that I'm talking about, and maybe I am just being a romantic, but if you quit voting a straight ticket just because your driver's license says you're a Democrat or your voter registration card says you're a Republican or whatever, and you vote based on what it is you want to see, then maybe we could make some change. And that's obviously not the only thing that has to happen. First of all, in Australia, it's mandated that you vote. You have to vote every time.
A lot of countries in the world.
And
Dominican Republic.
Here, you just go vote if you want, which is maybe the way democracy is supposed to be, except for the fact that nobody fucking votes. In the presidential election, according to the census, I've got all of these numbers from I don't know. Anyway, the highest percentage of people that voted was old people, which is probably obvious to everybody, but old people don't have the same needs or wants that I do. They are worried about Medicaid and Social Security. I'm coming close to worrying about that, but I'm not worried about it right now. I care about the environment. I care about my civil rights. I care about not having a fucking camera up my ass and in my living room every time I turn on the TV or open a window. Those are the kind of things that I care about, and we need to get more people to the polls.
So what was the disparity between old people and the numbers you're looking at and other age groups?
Well, so if you look at 18 to 24, the total population of registered voters was 28,659, which there are a hell of a lot more than 28,659 people between the ages of 18 and 24. And out of those, 15,984 voted, which is swell, 59.8%. That's a low number. 25 to 44, we had almost 87,000, 70% voted. But there's a hell of a lot more than 86,000 people that are
Is
25
that
to 44 years
in
old.
a state, or is that what's the?
This
what's
is
the
in the
time period?
United States from the Census Bureau. So it's
For what-
United States citizens.
What
This
year?
is 2020.
2020. Okay. That's brutal.
It's fucking shameful. And we should be ashamed. I'm ashamed of that.
But don't you? I mean, isn't that the cynicism that is attached to that failure to act, connected to the inability of, or the lack of response from? I mean, we can all want, this policy or that policy to be put into place, but if you vote for people and then they make certain promises and then they don't put, whether it's national health care, whether it's student debt relief or whatever, if you say that you're going to do these things, if you come out as coming in, say for instance you're going to get elected in 2020 and you make a promise to just knock $10,000 off a student,
and then you
then you don't do that.
Right.
What's that going to do to a citizen?
So if you are a politician and you know these numbers, that 18 to 24-year-olds, only 28,000 of them are registered to vote, then you don't have to worry about the promise you made about the student loans because most of them aren't registered to vote.
I understand that point.
And you're right, we do have to hold them accountable. But what I'm saying is that if more people registered and more people voted, then maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe they would think, you know what? They might not vote for me next time.
My favorite thinker on the planet is a Slovenian guy by the name of Slavoj Žižek. He is the most irreverent motherfucker that ever walked the face of the earth, which I really appreciate. Maybe next to Dave Chappelle, but come on, Dave Chappelle's.
I'm rich, bitch.
If you're not laughing and you're not in comedy, then you're not thinking critically in the first place. So you need to dial it back down. Listen to these people that talk shit and that are thinking that are fucking funny. And Slavoj Žižek, especially for an academic, is very good about that. But he was on, again, on a Bad Faith podcast in December 2021. And as much as I love people like Brianna Joy Gray, there's a problem with the philosophical assumptions that she maintains. And it's I'm gonna come at you a little bit right now, brother. All right.
Quit it.
But she can litigate certain dispositions with regards to activity like a lawyer in an incredible, because that's what her background is. She's got a law degree, and she owes a ton of money to financial institutions for education, much as we do, so but Žižek is this guy who's hypercritical of, I mean, he's identified as sort of like a Lacanian Hegelian Marxist, which is a complicated thing, but the way that comes out is that you don't just subscribe to political institutions like democracy as a way of fixing or changing the situation that you're involved in, right? So he made this really crazy comment before the 2016 election where he said somebody asked him, if you were going to vote for somebody in the U.S. election, who would you vote for? And he said, I know you're going to think that I'm fucking crazy for saying this, but he said, I would vote for Trump. And he said, they were like, what? You're a Marxist. And he's like, yeah, but Trump stands for something different. He says Hillary is essentially the same thing as every other mainstream Republican candidate that's been there forever. It's more of the same. You need somebody that's existing outside of that space. He actually grew to, and he got pounded for this comment all over the place in the left because nobody could believe that he would make this comment. Although I think if you're nuanced and you think about what he was saying, there were some things that were very interesting in the points that he was making. But having said that, there's a strategic vision when you make a comment like that understands the internal contradiction of an existing system like voting, right? So when he gets back on her show and he's talking to her, she's coming at him like full bore, and she's like, well, how do we change the system, right? He says the most obvious and most simple thing, that for whatever reason, like when a person wants a prescription to get from point A to point B, which is when you say, if all the people do register to vote and we are an activated population, then maybe this will be the outcome. That's like an ideal type argument that says if X and Y plus B, then C possibly
Oh,
G,
it's a
right?
romantic notion
Okay.
for sure.
But he says, well, you have to do everything, right? So what that means, obviously, is that you do vote. You do vote in radical ways in certain moments. You try to create alternative parties.
You don't use the lesser of two evils argument.
Ever, and you come at the system full fucking bore from 100 different directions, and sometimes in some pretty aggressive directions.
Well, and I'm a big believer in using a multi-pronged approach and not just sitting back and being quiet, Write your House representatives, write your senators. I understand that we can't donate money to everyone, and we probably shouldn't anyway.
Can't we? I mean, dark money and all that. Can't we create a different dark money space?
Oh, yeah, we definitely could. I mean, but
Citizens United for Revolutionaries or something?
Right. Then we'd just have to fight the Koch brothers. And the people that
Koch brother, right? I mean, thankfully one of those motherfuckers is dead now, so.
So, I know that voting isn't the only thing that you can do. Use a multi-pronged approach. If you are upset about the reversal of Roe versus Wade, sign petitions, get people involved at a grassroots level. And I don't know that that's going to do anything either, but we have to, like you said, attack them from every angle, and we have to let them know that they're accountable, because right now they're not worried about anything at all. The only thing most of them are worried about is the fact that there are term limits to some of them.
You and I are obsessive about things, just a little bit,
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, we're always going to kind of like be engaging with this this information, these thoughts, with the system, the way the system's reproducing itself and whatnot. Again, like an activated population, that is really, I mean, in the last episode, we were talking about how the people that are going to be most affected by Roe v. Wade are going to be the people that don't have the resources to defend their position, to protect themselves. So they're going to be forced to have children, and they're going to be locked into a financial nightmare for, and it just repeats again. Like let's be perfect. It's a new type of slavery. It's a new way of, it's constructing a new underclass that is existing there as a disposable labor force. Again.
Well, I've said for a long time that there is no black or Mexican or white. I mean, it's a socioeconomic thing.
Yeah.
It's a green line.
Yeah, this is postmodern power time. Yeah, everybody that's poor is in the same motherfucking space. So, and not just in the United States, throughout the globe.
There is literally a green line in Beirut. It's actually green.
Yeah, it's the Coppola, where you have these spaces.
It used to be, Muslims and Christians. Now it's rich people and poor people.
Dude, you want to talk about it? We gotta get back on track. But that's U.S. politics with Lebanon or Trump is fucking bad news, and it still is not getting corrected properly. So, come on, we need to work harder, folks. So, but that's the point that I'm making. Like, is if a person is if they're just barely making it through the day, able to reproduce the necessary conditions for them to eat, for their children to eat, I mean, how the fuck can that person ever activate themselves to be, to commit a political act, like an honest, like day-to-day political act? How can they even vote? They can barely even spend time thinking about voting.
I think that's a sad fucking excuse. Especially, okay, so I looked at other statistics that showed just blacks and whites voting. And the numbers for both were incredibly shitty. Mm-hmm. And white people, we've always had the right to vote. Black people, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and groups like Snake, SNCC.
Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Yeah.
They all worked their fucking ass
SCLC,
off,
all the stuff
and
that was going on.
kids died in Mississippi and everything else to make sure that black people had the right to vote. And now they're just fucking squandering it as much as white people
But
are.
how long can honestly, like that had to gain a certain kind of momentum, right? And the momentum was supposed to lead to somewhere, and it never led anywhere. So I mean, you can say that that's just an excuse, but at some point in time, and the real tragedy is kids that grow up in destitute situations like that are going to find other ways of expressing their frustrations.
I wasn't that fucking far off from destitute.
I'm
and maybe I'm an anomaly. Maybe you're an anomaly. But we lived in the same fucking neighborhood. So we were pretty destitute. Your sister ate fucking a sleeve of crackers and ranch dressing for dinner. That could just be because she fucking had a poor choice in meals, not because you were poor. But
a different kind of poor. Yeah.
Right. So,
but honestly, I still think that you're skirting the issue here. I mean, great, you pulled your fucking bootstraps up, motherfucker. Good for you. But that doesn't change the fact that when you create an underclass, you're always starting from a million feet behind where somebody else is starting from, and this is
okay. But we are the plebes, right?
Yes. Which is why we're having this conversation here.
There are more of us than there are of them. So there is just power in that.
You did hear last time I mentioned that I did a lot of stuff with Marx. So yeah, I get this point.
In that alone, we should not be scared of them. And we should let them know that they will be called
but again,
to question.
Even if you say that, right? You're like, you were looking at a time period. What was the outcome of what happened to Malcolm X? What happened to Martin Luther King? What happened to Stokely Carmichael? What happened to Huey and
Huey
and
jail,
Clark and Hampton? Jail and dead. Yeah.
Dead.
I mean, so like it's again like those communities, they're militarized, and that's turning into an economy. Obviously we're going to talk about that more later too. But the political economy of the militarization of that, resulting in prisons and militarized police, forces, the global police state stuff, William R. Robinson and that,
Well, we've got some serious problems, and
I just don't want to say that if a person votes.
No,
I don't want to.
And I'm not saying that. I'm just hoping that is the case. But here's something that's scary, and I mentioned it in episode 1. Right now, lots of states are doing things to take voters' rights away, and they're trying to make it impossible for anyone that doesn't fit the bill. They're trying to take away their right to vote. So again, we're talking about classes, but the plebes are losing their right to vote. And
can I say proles? Is that okay?
That's fine too. I like 1984. Take away our right to vote, and we're only a few steps away from being completely fucked.
Yeah, this is the tendency toward an autocratic disposition right now has never been more pronounced, I think.
And I know I'm not black. I do have soul, but I'm not black. But it breaks my heart to think, that those guys did go to jail because of the FBI, or they did get assassinated because of the CIA, or whatever the case may be. It breaks my fucking heart that the middle class in you name the city, but Los Angeles, where there were middle-class black people, they took away their jobs because they shut down the plants. They flooded the place with drugs and basically just said, you know what? We don't have to worry about them anymore.
It's that whole scene from Bulworth when he asks her what she thinks happened and the decimation of the industrial base, and yeah.
But it breaks my heart to think that Martin Luther King died. Malcolm X died because he thought that education and voting were so important to them, and it doesn't matter black or white, Mexican, we just don't fucking care, and maybe we shouldn't. But if we continue down this road of not giving a shit,
complacency is no good.
Then eventually we're going to give a shit, and we're not going to have anything we can do about it, because by then they've taken away our right to vote. They've taken away our guns. They've probably taken away our fucking food, and now we're just being given rationed food, and then
insect jelly from Snowpiercer,
having to punch out at 7:00 in the morning and then punch back in at midnight or whatever. I mean, and I think that that's the way it's going. I don't mean to sound like Free Jack or Demolition Man or fucking The Matrix or any of those movies, but we're heading down that road.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I don't make any arguments. Like, again, I'm romantically idiotic when it comes to our political institutions too. I watch the stupid movies National Treasure and like that dumb shit, I mean, but having said that, like, I just can't bypass I can't push aside the fact that the class side of these things makes the possibility that a person can be a good, thoughtful voter. It's a very bourgeois disposition.
Oh no, and there are other things that make the system broken. Farming. If you take sugar tariffs or wheat or any other thing like that, these farmers that are being paid not to grow are going to continue paying politicians for those particular grow or not grow, so that they continue to get paid for sitting around on their fucking ass and doing nothing, while the regular farmer who doesn't own 800 acres of land or whatever has to bust his fucking ass, and then we have to go and pay $9 for a fucking tomato because some cocksucker's being paid not to grow.
You gotta love those free markets.
The political system is broken, but again, we're at 50% of the voting population. I'm sorry. We have to get the number higher, and if it doesn't work, then I'll fucking tell you I was wrong.
I think that you're missing my point.
I got your point.
I really don't need you to tell me that you're wrong. Like, we just have, again, like, I'm back to Zizek. Like, we have to do all things at all times, and I was making fun of the sensitivity thing last time, but I do think that a person's, well, I don't go down the postmodern position, because I can't, the bullshit fucking postmodern aristocracy that's developing out of it just makes me want to fucking puke in my mouth. But I will at least acknowledge that when a person comes from a certain area and they have a certain background, they're starting so far. I mean, like, there was one statistic where never in history you had 3 generations of a specific demographic of people locked in a specific political economic disposition. And I mean, like, the way in which black and brown people have been, and yeah, sure, we got to take responsibility for things at a certain point, but dude, if you are strategically locked into a specific space, and then that strategic locking into a specific space pits you against other people that are in the same political economic space that you are, the old divide and conquer bullshit,
But that's exactly what they're doing, because we're all in the same space. We're all poor. It doesn't matter what fucking color our skin is, but it doesn't matter. They segregate us out here on purpose. If you go to prison, they segregate you there on purpose, because if we ever realize that we're all the same, we're just poor.
The prison point is so weird, like how structurally dynamic that the racial relationship inside of prisons so often. I mean, and it's there. I mean, it never goes like anywhere. Like you, if you're a specific demographic, you eat with this specific
You
demographic.
eat white.
You eat with that. Yes.
You eat black.
Yeah. And that's, say whatever the fuck you want. If you don't fucking know what I'm talking about, go do some fucking research, and then you can come back and talk shit to me about it. But you're gonna fucking realize that you don't know anything about anything. So
Take it easy there.
Well, it's just it's important. These are
It is.
important things. We need to understand. Like, if we're going to talk about power structures, I mean, come on, prison populations. That's some, especially because again, stuff we'll get into more later. But we're not trying to rehabilitate anything. It's fucking big business, big fucking business. And prisons both in the country, prisons at the borders. Like, this is.
We are all just cogs in a wheel. And it's funny. There is an Alaska state prison in the state of Colorado. So those people that are in Alaska get shipped down here. They don't get to see their family. They don't get anything unless somebody flies, 2,500 fucking miles?
A long fucking way, yes.
Yeah. So it's
What's the name of it? I mean, so it's a private prison?
It's Alaska State Prison, and it's privatized. But yeah,
why did they come to? That'd be something we'll have to look into that.
I don't know. We can talk about the prison industrial complex another time.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We need to attack from as many points as possible. I'm not talking about attacking with a gun or an RPG.
We just need to have a future, people.
Or an IED.
A real future.
Attack with what we have, which is numbers. Get your friends to sign a letter. Write a fucking letter yourself. If you can't write, have your kid write it. Something. We've got to do something, because this is bad news. And I don't want to end up like fucking Mad Max or some shit. Gas is $5 a gallon now. God damn it.
It's down to $4.50.
Oh, sweet. That is good news.
Split my wrist in a long time.
All right. So we cleared the half an hour mark about 8 minutes ago. Clearly, I'm a romantic, and I think voting might do something. I'm also a skeptic, and I'm not positive, but until I see the numbers, I can't say one way or the other. Darren clearly thinks voting isn't going to do anything.
Come on. Be fair. I said everything. You don't ever stop doing everything, But I'm just not going to. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to subscribe to ideal type arguments that that doesn't mean that I don't stop and picture the world that I'm in and see the parts of the world that I'm in that don't reflect the world that I would like them to be, and see sort of like some tendencies or some spaces that could be manipulated and used as a way to try to adjust it to go towards that. But if I'm going to use an analytic argument like that that's rooted in an ideal type space, I cannot divorce myself from the dialectical spaces that my thoughts are grounded in. So I will always divert back to that.
No, I got you.
Spots, so.
And I know, when I vote, I feel like it doesn't necessarily do anything either. But I'm all for making them raise an eyebrow. So get out there and vote. I know it can be intimidating if you've never done it before. But
fuck that, though. If you're really intimidated because you've never done it before, fuck that. Go fucking do it.
Make sure.
Get off your fucking ass and just do it.
Make sure and do it. It's important. People have died in order to get the right to vote.
Understand that, And the point that you make that is finer in relation to that, part of the reason why we started doing what we're doing right here is because one of my favorite movies, goofy ass fucking movie, but one of my favorite movies as a kid was Pump Up the Volume, right? So like this was a time period when you had to buy space in these areas, and right now we don't have to buy these spaces. We have these spaces for free where we can communicate. You might have to buy like a domain or something like that, but ultimately there is a degree of freedom with the way that we're capable of communicating right now, which let's be fucking perfectly honest, may not be here tomorrow. And if you see the autocratic tendencies that are emerging, you have to at the very least acknowledge that that's out there.
You don't even want me talking about the FCC, especially since we're close to the end of the show.
But we need to vote. We need to do the things that are at our fingertips, because yes, tomorrow, they may not be there, for one thing, and for two things, as you just suggested. If you don't do the things that are at your fingertips that people sacrificed a ton for you to be able to participate in, then you really don't have the right to open your mouth. You can fuck off. You can fuck off all day. So
quit complaining if you didn't do anything one way or the other. I'm not saying I have all the answers, because I definitely don't, but if you need help, I would be willing to help you.
He would. He's a total fucking pain in the ass, but he would help you.
So remember, you can get us on Twitter at Short Bus Debate Club. Phone number is
720-334
roll. Roll, bitches, roll. Again, I'm Brian Courtney. Thanks for joining.
I'm Darren Jolly. Have a good night.
Talk to you guys later.